Okay, well I got an interesting video for you today. I'm going to be taking the engine apart off my BMW E34 535i. Up until now the car has ran absolutely fantastic. Actually it still runs fantastic the way it is. But I have discovered a coolant leak, and initially I thought it was maybe one of the hoses or something. But it turns out that it was indeed actually the head gasket. This car is 22 years old and has 310,000 kilometers on it. So it's definitely a very well used car. It's pretty old. But considering all those two things, the car runs absolutely fantastic. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking the engine apart, taking the head off, and we're going to be inspecting the head and replacing the head gasket, and hopefully the head will still be true enough that we can just throw it back on. But if it's a little bit out of whack, then I'll probably be taking it to a machine shop to get skimmed a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take off the air inlet. And I do know this engine very well, so shouldn't be too much of a challenge for me to figure everything out here. And in a sec here I will go back and disconnect the battery because I haven't done that. That's the airbox. Or sorry, the top of the airbox anyway. This is the airflow sensor. Quite a few different tubes, and these are all air tubes that I'm going to be taking off here. Now where it is leaking, I initially did think it was just a hose or something that was leaking because I could smell the coolant. So the thing is with this head gasket, this blown head gasket, it's definitely an external leak. There may be an internal leak as well, I don't know, but I expect there's definitely an external leak because I found it. It's actually just right in the front here, right below the exhaust. So we're definitely going to be targeting that. And I actually don't have the new parts on me right now, but they'll be here at the end of the weekend. So I'll have this thing all apart and set to go, and just toss on the new parts and she's good to go. And the one thing that kind of sucks with old cars, of course, is that have all these old brittle plastic parts and things, so you have to be pretty careful of how you take things apart and put them back together again. Actually, before I should even do all this, I should be draining the coolant. I gotta do that too. This is the tricky one, still draining the coolant. Got one more coolant tube to go here, and this one's the lowest one, so it's definitely going to pour out of here for a while. It's always going to be tricky. I'm going to get another container here. Okay, so here's the coolant. It's looking really good. There's absolutely no oil or debris or anything in it so far. I did flush this coolant out a little while ago, so the coolant in the car is fairly new, but it's a good sign that there's absolutely nothing in it, so I think we're in pretty good shape here. Alright, so I've drained most of the coolant. The next thing I'm going to take off is the fan. Now, in order to take the fan off, you need a really big 32mm wrench. And lucky for me, I've actually taken off the fan before, so this thing I know should be a piece of cake to get off. Let's see here. There we go, and I got it. So it's actually a reverse thread, because that's the direction the engine spins, it's threaded in such a way that whenever the engine's running, it actually wants to tighten all the time. So that's what keeps your fan from flying off. So this thing is actually pretty heavy from what I remember. Oh, it's not bad. So there's the fan. So it's like a viscous clutch fan. Here's the fan. So this big nut on here is a 32mm nut. And you know, you can see I can spin it, but there is some resistance there, and as it gets hot, the resistance goes way up, and then that causes the fan to spin faster. So yeah, this thing is still in perfect working condition, so there's no cracks on the blades or anything. Yeah, they're all perfectly fine, so definitely looking good. I'm actually just putting all the parts in the trunk of the car to keep them from getting lost. So next thing that's got to come off has got to be that radiator. So in order to do that, all the coolant lines are disconnected, but there is still the automatic transmission lines, and I've never taken those off, so those might be a bit interesting. I'll have to be really gentle with those, and this will go from there. Alright, so I'm just about to take the radiator out here, and it looks like there's a some kind of temperature switch on the radiator here. I think that's for the electric fan in the front. So I'm not quite sure how to get that off yet, but I'm going to figure it out here. And I already took off the fan, the cowling for the fan. The automatic transmission lines came off extremely easy. I just sprayed a bit of oil on them and unscrewed them, and they just came right out very easily. And all the coolant lines are off, so just that left, and then the radiator can come right out. Alright, the radiator is completely out, and it looks like it's in extremely good shape. This is the front, so there's just some debris on there. And here's the engine side. And I mean, a couple of bent fins there, but really nothing. I'm pretty sure, I'm just looking at this thing here, I don't think this is the original radiator now that I think about it. It could be, but if it is, it's in extraordinarily good shape, so there's really no reason to replace it, and especially since it hasn't been leaking. Here's the AC radiator. You can see a bit rougher shape because it's actually in front of the main radiator there, so I'm sure it gets hit by all the rocks and everything from the road. Alright, got a bit further along here. Just got all the electrics off for the fuel injector rail. The actual fuel rail is coming next. And then after that, it's actually pretty well, there's pretty well nothing left other than the actual head removal. Oh, sorry, I still have to take off the exhaust. So I still have to take off the fuel injector rail there and the exhaust and a couple other miscellaneous cables like the throttle cable and the cruise control cable there, and then it should basically be head pulling time. So yeah, she's going good. So here's a look inside of the thermostat housing. Or where it was anyway, inside the thermostat housing port. There's really no corrosion or nothing on there that I can see, so I think she's looking really good. Alright, so we're basically down to only a couple things left to do. The thermostat housing is removed. All I have to do now is remove the front timing cover there and fasten the timing chain and sprocket together. Remove that, and then remove the valve cover and remove the head, and that should be everything. Oh, I still do have to take those cables off, the throttle cable and the cruise control cable there. Okay, so we're down to the raw block now. The head has been removed, the head gasket has also been removed. So I guess let's just take a look at the head now. And here's a better look at the block. So you can see cylinder number 2 there is a bit more cleaned out than all the other ones. Looks like all the other ones have a fair bit of carbon on them. To be expected, it's an old car. This one actually looks like it might have had a bit of oil. You know what, the thing is that makes this difficult now is that when actually one of my buddies came over to help me remove the head, and when we took off the head, you know, of course all the coolant and oil kind of mixed around in here as we took it off, so it could just be oil just fell on that cylinder there. I'm really not sure. But yeah, this one is looking cleaner than all the other ones, so maybe some coolant was getting in there. It's really hard to tell. But overall, looking good. There's no issues with the block at all. This thing's solid. So yeah, this engine, the BMW M30, is supposed to be really solid from what I hear. So the block, the bottom end, is really bulletproof. And then over here, I got the timing chain and sprocket kind of zip tied up there and secured, so nothing moves around, and should be able to just hopefully, if the head is good, just bolt it back up and hook it all back together, and it should be good to go. One other thing I am going to do while I'm in here, because it's kind of hard to get to, is I'm actually going to be replacing the starter motor as well. That's this thing over here. You can see once that big intake manifold is on, it's really hard to access these bolts here, back here, and these electrical connections, so it's really hard to change. And the starter motor has given me an issue or two in the past, so I'm just going to change that out and make sure she's all good. But yeah, that's the engine. Okay, so here's the head. At first glance, things are looking really good. This over here is cylinder number 1. That's that at the front of the car there. And as you go along, you got all 6 cylinders in a line. And the biggest problem I can see with the whole head is just some pitting on this port right here. You can probably see that in the light there. There's just a bit of a hole there. But other than that, I don't really see anything that stands out too much to me. I'm not really an expert on any of this stuff, so if anyone else is, feel free to comment or let me know. The only thing I do notice is that this cylinder here is a bit lighter in color than all the other ones. So maybe there was a bit of coolant getting in there or something and cleaning it out. I don't really know, but other than that, it's looking pretty good. I'm gonna attempt to check it for trueness, and hopefully it's nice and flat. Here's the head gasket. It's looking pretty good. There's a few small chunks taken out of it, but I'm pretty darn sure this is the original head gasket, so considering that, it's looking pretty good. So my coolant leak was over here. This is the front of the engine, this end here, and you can see there's a little crack right there, and that's a cooling port. So yeah, the coolant was actually escaping external to the engine. So you can see that little break there now. And other than that, there's really no major issues with this gasket. There's a few chunks taken out. Let me just flip this over here. Let's see what we got here on the back side. Here we go. There's a pretty good chunk taken out here. That part of that is still on the block, actually. And yeah, a couple other minor chunks taken out of it. But other than that, it looks like no other major issues, I think. So I think we're in good shape. With a bit of luck, that head will be nice and flat, and I'll just be able to put on a new head gasket and put the head back on. On one end, I would expect the head to be warped just because the car is so old. Whoops, looks like I just broke this thing. Yeah, it might have been starting to break there too. Yeah, on one hand, I would expect the head to be warped just because this car is so old. But on the other hand, I would expect it to be reasonably good still, considering the only problem was that one little split there. So it might have just been, over the years of heating and cooling, the head gasket here finally failed in that one little tiny spot. Okay, so I've just been trying to determine if the actual head is warped or not. And so I've just been taking a ruler here, the straightest thing I have, and I've been using feeler gauges, and I've just been kind of going along the edge of the ruler there when I have it stood up on end like that, and just trying to figure out how much run out the head has. And as far as I can figure, this feeler gauge here, what is it, 0.1 millimeters. This one doesn't fit anywhere, so it's definitely not that far out. When I pull out the 0.07 millimeter feeler gauge, that's about 3 thou. That one can just barely fit under in a couple spots. both on this side and that side. So that's just around 3 thou there, so I'm pretty sure I'm good here. I don't think I need to get this head machined at all. I think it can go straight back on the head the way it is, or on the block, sorry, the way it is. I think I just need a new gasket. I guess just over the years that that gasket over there just got that small little break in it, and that's what caused the leak. So yeah, pretty interesting. So there definitely is some pitting going on with these ports here. Let me get a better close-up of those. Alright, so I just flip sides here. So this is actually the this is the intake side here. So let's have a look here. So we got very minor pitting on all of these ports on this side. They all look very good. Really no problems at all. There we go. And then we can go to the exhaust side. There's some little bit more severe pitting. Still, considering the age of this engine, really not a big deal, I think. That's probably the worst one right there. You can see there's some decent pitting on that one, but it's, like I said, it's still gonna work fine. There's definitely no pitting coming in near the cylinder, so it should be fine. There's actually a decent one there, but that's still alright. Let's continue on this side. And yeah, there we go. A little bit of pitting on those ones as well. A little bit more there, and yeah. Oh, some decent pitting on that one. So I'd be most worried about this one actually, because it kind of approaches the cylinder wall there. But it's still got a pretty good distance there. You can see my finger. That's still a pretty good distance there. The gasket should be able to take care of that just fine. Yeah, so as far as I can tell, the head is in good shape. There's just some minor pitting on those ports on the exhaust side. Maybe it just gets hotter over there or something. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure exactly what causes the pitting, to be honest. But there you go. So I've kind of determined that the head, I've determined as best I can that the head is flat and flat enough to go back on and without any kind of machining. So I think I'm just going to spend a little bit more time kind of polishing it up, making sure it's really nice, and then I'll do the same to the block, and it'll go back together. Alright, so here's another look at the block. So I've kind of polished it up a little bit. The carbon deposits inside on the pistons there are definitely coming off really easily now. I just sprayed a bit of oil in there, and it seems that all the carbon just wants to peel off now, so I have a feeling those are going to be squeaky clean by the time I'm done here. So the next thing I got to do is I got to take that starter motor out, and then beyond that, just once the parts get in, I'll be putting it all back together. Pretty straightforward job, really. This engine is fairly simple, which is really helpful. And just to give you kind of a scale of the size of this engine, this is a big engine. You can see it. This is a big engine bay. In these BMWs, they actually put V8s in some of them. The 540 model, so it's so this one here has a 3.5 liter inline 6 in it, and this was by far the most durable engine that BMW ever made. And obviously, it's pretty evident that it's still going strong. So I just had that minor head gasket failure. But yeah, it's amazing to think that they had a 4 liter V8 in here. That must have taken up quite a bit more space than this inline 6, and they still got it in there. So yeah, there's a decent. It's a big engine, but there's still enough room to work around it that it's not a huge headache. So it's not bad at all. Okay, so I got the new parts in. So let's take a look at the new head gasket. The main thing I notice is that for some reason these ports down here are oh, never mind, it's all the same. For a second there I thought it was different, but no, it's exactly the same. So you can see you got 2 holes there, 2 holes, and 2 holes, and same thing, 2 holes, 2 holes, and 2 holes. So I was just thinking maybe these holes are different sizes, especially these ones here, but no, these ones are still small on the new one. So So yeah, it looks like it's a good gasket. It's got solid metal around the pistons, and the rest of it, I'm not sure exactly what kind of material it is, but it feels pretty solid, so should be good, I think. Okay, so here's a view of the block all cleaned up. I cleaned it up as much as I could without being too aggressive with it, with abrasives and things, so I just poured some transmission fluid in each of onto the cylinders there, and most of the carbon just kind of wiped off, but I did kind of rub it off a little bit. There is two little alignment thingies here that I put back into the block. I took those out before, so I should be able to just throw the gasket on there now, and let's take a look at the head. Well, here's what it looks like with the gasket on top. It's just sitting there. It's kind of seated around those little guiding pins there. And so I'm just about to throw the head back on, and then we'll run the bolts in, and she'll be all buttoned up. At least the head will be. So here's what the head looks like just before reinstallation. Okay, so I've just installed the starter motor. Basically there's just two bolts holding that on. There's the one bolt you can see right there, and then there's one underneath, and they're both 17mm bolts. Now I'm just going to put the electrical connections on for it, or at least the ones that I can for now. I have initially torqued the bolts on the head already to 40 foot-pounds to start, and the instructions say to wait about a half hour before I torque them anymore. And then I'll torque them a little bit more in a bit here, and yeah, things are going good. So the engine reassembly is going well. I'm just kind of taking my time with it now, make sure I don't make any mistakes. I did accidentally let the timing chain slip a tooth or two on the bottom sprocket. So to recheck the timing, it's very simple. All you do is you line up, there's a little mark here on the lower timing cover, just down here, little notch, and there's a mark on this big geared flywheel or pulley here, I guess you could say. and it says T/0. So you just line the little T/0 mark on that pulley there up to the little notch on the lower timing cover. And then what you do is you make sure the chain is tight on this side, and then you make sure that the bolts on the pulley are parallel to the head, and as well the little nubbin, the alignment mark on the pulley, the little alignment nubbin should be in this corner here. So that's all you do to make sure the engine's timed correctly, and as you can see here it is. The nubbin's right there, the bolts are actually parallel with the head, and that notch on the lower pulley there is lined up with the T/0 mark. So yeah, the timing is correct. Well, here's where she's at so far. The intake is back on. The hardest part of that was getting the intake bolts underneath here. You can't see them anymore because I put the fuel injector rail back on, or the electrics for it. But the bolts underneath were very tricky to get. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. It was definitely worth it to put the head on by itself though, because it's so heavy and awkward. If I put it back on with the manifold attached, that would have been very hard. So something to keep in mind. Those bolts under there are pretty tricky. So I'm just working on all the miscellaneous stuff now. I have to do a couple bolts up on the timing cover on the front there. And then from there it's mainly hoses and electrical cables. So it's pretty straightforward from here. I'm just working on putting the exhaust back on, and I just thought I'd mention a couple handy tricks to do this. I didn't take off the down pipes, which are the bolts for are down quite a bit. There's one of them there. They're quite a ways down there, and they're very difficult to take off, and very often you break them when you take them off. I broke one myself when I tried to take them off one time. So I ended up just replacing it with a regular bolt. But anyway, I found the best way to kind of put these back on is you kind of need to do both at the same time. You can't really do one and then the other. You kind of have to feed a bolt into one and then feed a bolt into the other one, both of these headers here, and kind of do them both at the same time, because they're both connected to the same exhaust pipe down below there. So they kind of pull on each other, if you will. So it's really best to do them both at the same time. And so these are what the bolts look like that hold the exhaust headers in. And what they are is they're just threaded studs with a nut on the end. And if you're lucky, when you're undoing these, they'll come out the way mine came out, which is they came out with the bolt and the nut attached like that. If you're unlucky, the nut will thread off of this stud here, and you'll be left with the stud in the block, and that's kind of awkward, because then when you're trying to pull the exhaust off, it makes it very awkward. So one important thing to note when you're putting this back together is use a little bit of anti-seize on the threads, and that'll keep the studs from getting locked into the block, and then you'll end up just threading off the nut, which is kind of annoying. So you want the whole stud to come out, so make sure you put a little bit anti-seize on here when you're putting them back in. And these bolts are 12mm as well. Everything on the intake was also 12mm. All the exhaust stuff here is 12mm, so keep that in mind. All the valve cover nuts and the timing cover nuts and bolts, those were all 10mm. I just put the distributor and cap on and all the ignition wires. Very straightforward. I had all the wires labeled, so they just pop back into place, no problem. Next up is the radiator, and then the coolant hoses, and that's about it, I think. So we're almost good to go here. Okay, cooling stuff is done, fans back on, radiator's in, all the hose clamps are tight. All that's left is the air intake, and we're good to go here. And the battery, of course. Okay, so she's all set to go. Basically I just need to top up the coolant, which I've been doing, and bleed out the system a little bit before I start her up, and fingers crossed everything should be good. So this is how the engine looks like in all her glory when everything's back where it should be. Alright, let's just take a look from the other side. There we go. Should be all set to go. Well, okay, she's all full of fluids. I figured I'd sleep on it and make sure I'd think about it overnight and make sure I didn't goof anything up. And I'm pretty sure everything's good to go. I can't think of a single thing I missed. So I think we're all good here. So I've connected the battery back up. That went all fine. So it's time to fire it up now. Let's see what happens. Oh, that runs smooth. That's very smooth. Well, she started off really smoothly, and that new starter motor I put in has a ton of stink to it compared to the old one. But the only thing is I got some sort of exhaust leak, so I'm gonna have to deal with that. Okay, it's kind of hard to see, but there's smoke rising, and I'm pretty sure I have some sort of exhaust leak. It didn't sound like I had an exhaust leak though, which is the interesting thing. It might just be oil kind of burning off here. I'm not really sure yet, but I figured I might as well investigate before I run the car anymore. So let's just take a closer look here. Well, I ran the engine for maybe about 20 seconds, just a tad longer than that last video there. I started it up just once more, and I noticed that it started to bog down just a little bit. So I shut it off and I came to check the oil, and of course, you know, the oil is all mucked up, so I'm changing that now. My original plan was to kind of drive around the block and then change it, but I guess you pretty well got to change it right off the bat, because there's it was basically just what you see in there. It's like chocolatey goo, and the oil filter was all collapsed and everything, so I'm sure it was completely saturated with gunk. So I'm just gonna change the oil, throw a new filter in, and we'll see how we go from there. Okay, so just a quick update on the car. She runs fantastic. I think the biggest difference that anything made is probably that new starter motor. It just turns over so easily now and starts up every time. It does run a lot smoother. I think that had to do with cleaning off all the carbon off of those pistons. And yeah, it seems to have a lot smoother and a quicker response now too to the throttle position, which could be from the all the intake hoses I replaced as well. So yeah, she runs fantastic. The only thing I noticed so far is that, of course, I can smell a lot of burning oil because there's oil on the outside of the engine that's burning off, but other than that, she's pretty well awesome, perfect. So yeah, if you're doing this job yourself, a couple things to keep in mind. You're definitely going to need at least a couple days to pull it apart and put it back together if you're doing it properly. It does take a fair bit of patience, but it's not a difficult job. It takes a while, and you need quite a bit of patience. Take your time with it. A couple issues you may run into is That fan on the front of the engine has a habit of rusting on. I'm lucky enough that I have taken it off before, so it came off no problem. But other than that, everything's pretty straightforward. You may also have some issues with rusting bolts on the exhaust as well, if you're because you obviously need to take that off to get the head off. And if you're unlucky enough that your engine has overheated or whatnot, then you may have a warped head, so you may have to take it to a machine shop to get it milled. Oh, one other thing that's pretty obvious is definitely change the oil as soon as you can. Maybe run the engine for 10 or 20 seconds or so and then change the oil. That's basically what I did. Because all that oil, you know, of course it's going to be full of all that a bunch of crap from when you pulled off the head, because as soon as you pull off the head, a lot of coolant and oil want to mix kind of right in that location there. And of course when you go to clean it, clean all the pistons off and everything, more of that cleaning solution, all that kind of stuff, that's going to get down into those ports as well. So yeah, keep that in mind, that you should be changing that oil as soon as you can. And I actually changed my oil once already, pretty much right after I started it up, and then I ran that for a few minutes around the block, and then I changed it again. So I've actually changed oil twice. It's definitely a good preventative measure to do. And also make sure you put a new oil filter in, because that oil filter is going to get jammed up with all that milky goo very quickly. Other than that, pretty straightforward job.